I design specific lessons for specific students and their individual needs. So if you come to the United States and you're studying engineering, I help you acclimate to the English that you need to be in a college environment. If you move here and you're building a house, I help you with the contractors. Even if you're here interviewing for an internship, then I can help you with small talk and how to talk to your colleagues and friends in the new community. I find that a lot of people come to the US for either short term or long term, thinking that they have a good grasp of English, which is great to use for international communication. But once you get to the US, you need to know the difference between what's advanced and what is appropriate, because sometimes the same words that you would use or phrases that you would use that are advanced are not always what you would use in class or at a job interview. Um, and so you need to know whether you use those with friends or whether you use those in a more professional or academic environment. A lot of students come to the US and think, okay, I'm good in math, I'm good in science, I need to work on my English, and so that will be what I struggle with. But when they get here, they find out that they don't have the academic English to do the math or do the science. They have the knowledge, but when the professor's talking, they stumble over things that the professor says when it's just foundational math concepts. For example, like if you see somebody say 2 plus 2 equals 4, a lot of students think of the plus sign as addition. And so they're expecting to hear something about add, and that's not the words that we use. Um, or, for example, they may know how to calculate the area of a circle, but they don't know what the word area or perimeter mean because that's not vocabulary that they've come across before. Math students that come and realize that they're not doing well in math because they don't know the English, it really takes an emotional hit on them. Like their self confidence is hurt by the fact that they have way more to learn than they thought. And sometimes being away from home and having that added struggle that they weren't prepared for is hard on being a new student, whether it's a new student to college or graduate school or even a PhD. A lot of times, also, it's hard to distinguish if you don't know the English of what the teacher's saying, the vocabulary of the class, whether it's a math or a science class, or if you don't understand the concept. So if especially if you jump into school and, for example, you're learning math and you jump into college algebra, you don't know if you don't understand the algebra part or the English part. And it's hard learning both at the same time. First of all, when we're in a new situation and something surprising happens and we start to panic, our critical thinking skills leave, and a lot of times our language skills leave because we're panicked, and you revert back to um, your native language and habits that you have in the past. Most of the time, when students come here and get an apartment, it's the first time that they've ever lived on their own. And so they don't have habits and skills of taking care of apartments when something happens. So, for example, if your toilet overflows, you have to know how to call the maintenance department at your apartment and have somebody come and fix it. And a lot of times, when I get a new student who's living on their own, we talk about all of the words like overflow, clogged, broken, um, and a lot more specific about the things in the home because I've realized that people like in the kitchen know the sink, but don't know the faucets or don't know the drain. And so when they're describing that to a maintenance person, especially on the phone, which is the hardest form of communication for somebody whose English is not their first language, because usually the person on the other end of the phone, English is not their first language either. So you're trying to explain something and they can't see what's happening or your hand motions in describing something's overflowing. They don't know. So I try to help new people who relocate to the US know some of those situations where they might panic. Um, Maintenance is one for college students. Another is when they're sick and going to the doctor the first time in the US is different. Um, and it's just knowing the system. So I help students who are new to the US kind of navigate some of those situations where they panic and need their English language prepared ahead of time. When a family moves to the United States and enrolls in school from kindergarten to 12th grade, a lot of times you need to find out how the school communicates with the parent and how the parent can communicate the needs of the child to the school. Because you may not be starting out in lower elementary grades. You may have a 13, 14, 15-year-old that has established education history and needs, and you know how your child learns and need to express that because they may have had testing in your home country or in another country that you've been in. Um, so I help parents know how to talk to the school because our schools have a lot of abbreviations and they don't necessarily in their information on websites, they don't break those down into what those mean or who those apply to. Um, so I help parents navigate in who they need to talk to in the school, who they should expect communication from, um, at how the grading system works and how you accumulate credits for high school or for college, and kind of walk through that process. Even if you have children that are in early elementary, because you may think you're going to be here for a long time, and even if you think, oh, I'm just here for 2 years or 3 years, some end up staying longer, and you hear things and you want to know, does that apply to me and my child, or is that something a lot further down the line? And I will say it always gets here faster than you think. Sometimes you may be moving to the US and one family member has a job that's relocated them, but the other family member is waiting for a work permit or wanting to start to work in the US. Um, you have skills and background from your career, um, but you need interview skills on how to have small talk with the people that you're interviewing with because they're not only interviewing you for, do you know UX design? You are experienced in that and have a background in that, but they need to know, can they put you in front of a client and you speak to a client in English and be able to represent their company? So I help students on their interview skills prepare for that small talk, prepare to show who they are inside their core being in English. You may be able to express that in Spanish or French or Italian, but I also want you to be able to express who you are in English. The best thing about my job is that I get to see my students flourish in their new community, whether it is being able to talk to a teacher on their own, um, being able to understand a whole class in math on their own. I had one student, she was so excited, she got to return a cell phone without taking her husband. And that was the highlight of her day. And when my students come back and are so excited that they feel like they accomplished something with their new English skills, um, that just makes me so happy. That's my favorite part.